Hey everybody, this is Andy, aka Love Retro BTW, across Twitter, Instagram, and Twitch. I do a podcast every Saturday called Cafe BTW, a morning gaming podcast, a retrospective look at the wonderful world of retro gaming, from interviews to guests. Join us every Saturday, like a Saturday morning cartoon, starting at 8 a.m., 11 a.m. Eastern. Also, if you're on Twitter, please join the brand new retro gaming community, a place to share, connect, and show your love for the retro gaming community. All the links are down below. And remember, enjoy the Gamers Week podcast.
This time on Gamers Week podcast.
I don't think I've ever been insulted when a game asked me what I wanted to play.
Oh man, I have.
Oh, have you?
I mean, not at the beginning, but it's like if you play through the campaign of Super Mario Maker 2, I think it's if you die 3 times on the same level, then a little dialogue box pops up with Luigi and says, "Hey, bro, do you want some help?" I'm like, "Get the out of here, Luigi. I know what I'm doing. I don't need your help." Maybe that's just me.
That touched a nerve.
Yeah, really. Luigi always went like, "Oh my god, that was so funny."
She yelled at Luigi.
Started watching The Walking Dead again.
Yeah.
Is that still on?
Oh, it's not on. Well, maybe it is. I don't know. But
No,
I started
the final season was already done.
Yep. I started at season 1 again. But Rick and crew have found that prison. And I was thinking, like, what would be a good place to hole up if the zombie apocalypse comes?
Actually, I think what zombie movies and TV shows have taught me is that holing up is the wrong idea.
Just keep moving, being nomads?
Yeah, you need to be mobile, light on your feet, just a few resources, a few people, and be flexible that way.
I like flexibility.
Doesn't everyone?
You guys ready?
Yup.
Born ready, sir.
Born ready, sir. Welcome to Gamers Week podcast. Like the name says, we analyze the best, worst, and weirdest headlines of the past week in the video game industry. This is episode 62, and today is Wednesday, March 1st, 2023. Wake up, wake up, wake up. It's the first of the month.
Cash your checks and get up.
My name is Donnie G. Retro, and I will be your host this evening. But with me, as always, are my 2 fine co-hosts. One of them is recently back from a failed venture as a flying douche canoe, and we still don't know if this involves a trapeze. Lou Williams, how are you doing tonight?
Okay, A, you never picked up the comp tickets that I left at the gate. Okay, if you had, you would know whether or not it involves a trapeze. That's on you. B, the group has recently broken up due to creative differences. So guess what? Now you guys are stuck with me.
So the memorabilia from the douche canoe concert series, whatever, how much is that going to be worth in about 30 years?
It will be worth hundreds upon thousands of cents.
My second guest is allergic to both types, hairy and hairless. Ladies and gentlemen, the one, the only, Mr. Ryan Payne, a.k.a. Retro Game Brews.
Talk about bad places to start. You know?
So let's take a look at our reviews, reactions, and requests for the week. At Chunky Boy Kilo says, I might not have won the giveaway, but y'all won me as a fan of the podcast. And Chunky Boy, that's what matters the most.
Aw.
Andres Gill says, I didn't win, but I really enjoyed listening to your show for the first time, particularly the gaming news. Thanks. Everybody remembers their first time.
We're gentle with the first timers.
But not with the regulars. And Ernest Pack says, listening to the podcast, and I have to say, Nintendo really can work with their older 2D games more, even just restyling them with the 2D, 3D effect like Octopath Traveler. Imagine the older Metroid, Mario, Zelda, or Pokemon games made with that visual effect. So much easy money. I think I would enjoy the original Metroid more if it was done in this style of Octopath Traveler, because things would be a lot clearer in that specific game, where if you remember correctly, you just roll around for hours because you were looking for that one specific spot that you had no idea it existed.
You didn't know that was like the subtitle of the game was roll around for hours?
I did not. I didn't get that memo.
It's on very, 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 very tiny print on the box, but it is there. And now it's time for the
very important poll.
Wow, what a trip.
Every Monday on Twitter, we post our VIP. That is our very important poll. And if you'd like to participate, follow us on Twitter at GamersWeekPC. So the question for this week, what is your favorite bad guy turned good in video games? Coming in at third place, we have Azrael from Undertale with 5.8% of the vote. King DDD from the Kirby series came in second with 18.2% and crushing the competition with a whopping 61.7% of the votes. We have Knuckles from the Sonic series. Now, we also had 14.3% of people vote other, so let's look at some of the comments from the poll. At Marsupial Gamer says, does General Leo count? He was never really evil, but he worked for the bad guys before realizing how evil they really were. At VidioH Games said, going with our boy Arthur Morgan on this one. His story arc from villain to hero, depending on your playthrough, of course, was just fantastic.
Spoiler alert.
This is a spoilery question, so I mean...
And I've learned a new word, spoilery.
Spoilery.
Spoiler.
At Jack3600 says Bowser, specific to Super Mario RPG. At Memento Mori said, maybe I am too sensitive, but I found the final scene of Portal 2 actually moving. GLaDOS not only redeemed herself, but low-key admitted she would miss Chell. Or better, she would have missed her, so she erased that part of herself. Wow. And at Lantern JK said, Knuckles helped me realize I don't have to be the sidekick in my story. That should be on a...
Right, a motivational poster.
Right. Your homeroom teacher in high school would have it up on her wall. So how did you vote in the poll, Ryan?
So I went with other.
I know exactly who you chose.
Well, okay. Then I'll give you an opportunity to guess.
Nope, go ahead.
All right. So, well, my choices are probably going to stem from the Super Nintendo, so that's easy. So did I? Are you still on? You still on board?
I'm still. Yeah. I'm still
Okay.
here.
Okay. Cool. My first thought was Shadow from Final Fantasy VI. He's not necessarily a bad guy, but he's not exactly a good guy, and he ends up joining your party every once in a while. But if you stick around towards one particular part of the game, I don't want to spoil too much, but if you wait around, he'll show up and you get to save him. But he's still like, he has this bad aura about him. But my real choice is going to be Magus from Chrono Trigger.
You're so predictable.
I know. But he's essentially the main villain for a lot of the game. Even though Labos exists out there, he is the guy who is basically f***ing up all of your shit the entire game, right?
Thanks for that.
Yep.
Right.
And eventually, though, he decides that he wants to join the crew because the representation, or the realization rather, is that he has the same goal. So yeah, Magus gets my vote. He's a baddie, and now he's a goodie.
Okay.
He was a heel turn face.
There it is.
How did you vote, Donnie?
One of the ones that I chose was Revan from Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic.
Ooh,
now,
okay.
He didn't choose to switch sides, okay? He was knocked out in a battle, and he loses his memory. And when he comes to, he's helped by the Republic. He joins their cause and then turns into a Jedi. So while he is a Jedi, the truth of what he used to do comes out whenever he confronts his former apprentice, Darth Malak. And spoiler alert, Darth Malak gets struck down and Revan becomes a Knight of the Jedi Order. And I think that's a very open and shut case of classic redemption.
Classic redemption and space wizards.
Blue, what about you? What was your choice this week?
So I went with Kratos. I will acknowledge that calling Kratos a good guy is kind of a stretch. For most of the series, he's really more of just like an anti-hero. He's a protagonist, not necessarily a good guy. Mm-hmm. He is on the warpath of revenge, but as you kind of play through more and more of the games, you realize that, yes, he's doing horrible things to everyone who gets in his way, but he's really just trying to come to terms with his failure as a husband and a father, in that he didn't protect his family and now they're dead and it's his fault. And him trying to come to terms with that and go on with his life is really what the series comes down to. And then I think by the time they've rebooted the series, you probably could say that even though he's gruff and grumpy and at first pretty distant from his son, he is a good guy, I think, by the last two games.
When you were talking about whether he's a good guy or not a good guy, it just reminded me of Wreck-It Ralph, where Zangief is talking.
He's a bad guy, but doesn't mean he's a bad guy.
Bad guy.
Right.
All right, so why don't we do our patron shout out for the week? We couldn't do what we do without the help of our gorgeous patrons. Here are the generous folks supporting Gamers Week on Patreon. Geek With That, Johnny Boobats, Crunchy Kong, Mario, Frank Grande, Love Retro BTW, Stephen Tan, Ramboski, Terry Kinnair, Ducks in Disguise, Jim and Colleen, Games of Coffee, Hybrid Divide, You Fall Before Me, Davey PGH, the Red Ox PDX family, including Shannon and Luke, Zach Huge Thanks, #1 Blue Sick Voice fan, Random Retro Dude, Princess Kitty Mew Mew, Rai Rai's Secret Best Friend, Mega Retro Man, Gamma Troid, Emo S, Bill Tucker, The Real Retro Game Brews, Fruitcake's #1 Stan, Ducks with Thick Thighs, The Wizard of Zardoz, Bobson Dugnut, Great Siaman 81, and BNT Zilla Guy. If you like what you hear, and we really hope that you do, please consider joining us on Patreon. Your support helps cover the cost of producing the show, as well as other cool stuff we'll be doing like prizes and giveaways. You also gain access to our weekly patron-only bonus cast called Gamers Week Uncut, Patrons with Benefits. Visit patreon.com/gamersweek or follow the link in the show notes to learn more.
All right, let's take a look at the headlines for the week. Our headline segment is proudly sponsored by the Retro Game Club podcast. It's a fantastic family-friendly retro gaming podcast. In each episode, Rob and Hugh pick 2 games to play and discuss, as well as news, interviews, and other topics. Right now, they want to know your favorite console to take with you traveling. Send your answers to email at retrogameclub.net or follow the link in the show notes. And mine is the Philips CDI.
What, traveling?
Skeptical.
Right. I have doubts.
I can't hook it up to any TV, so...
You know, there's people, though, that have hooked up their N64 to the screen on their car. So, I mean, anything is possible.
Those are the types of people that can make a bong out of anything.
I need an avocado, a snorkel, and an ice pick. Trust me, bro, I've made bongs with less.
Nice.
All right. First up tonight from GameSpot, Konami set to bring new Castlevania and Metal Gear Solid 3 Remake to E3. A new report claims that Konami is planning to reveal a new Castlevania and a Metal Gear Solid 3 remake at this year's E3. According to Andy Robinson, editor-in-chief at VGC, Konami is planning to have a pretty big E3, claiming that a new Castlevania is set to appear alongside the much-rumored Metal Gear Solid 3 remake. There's a new Castlevania in addition to the Dead Cells DLC they announced at the Game Awards, Robinson explained, and there's this much-discussed Metal Gear Solid 3 remake, which I also expect expect them to finally show. In terms of the other older Metal Gear Solid games potentially being playable on modern platforms, Robinson said, "I would imagine that Metal Gear Solid 3 the remake is going to be somewhat of a test bed for that." Robinson also noted how Konami is opening up to collaborating with more developers, though it wasn't clear if he was just talking about the Silent Hill series or Konami's wider portfolio as well. Some kind of Metal Gear Solid 3 remake has been rumored for a long while now, but there's been no official comment from Konami on the matter. Last October, the also long-rumored and repeatedly leaked Silent Hill 2 remake was revealed, which is being developed by Layers of Fear Studio Bloober Team. Also revealed at the time was Silent Hill F, the first game in the series to bring the story to Konami's native Japan, and Silent Hill Townfall, which comes from the indie studio No Code.
I think I'm less surprised that they're coming out with a new Castlevania and the I almost did Metal 3 Solid Gear.
It's a deceptively difficult title.
It is. It definitely is. But I'm less surprised that they're coming out with those two games than the fact that anybody is going to E3 this year.
Touche. But I'm really excited for the idea of a new Castlevania game.
Right?
I mean, the last Castlevania game, I think, was Lords of Shadow 2, which is like in 2014, unless you count Castlevania Grimoire of Souls, which was released in 2019 on Android and iOS, and I do not count that. So it has been 9 years since we've had a Castlevania game, and even longer since we've had a proper like 2D Castlevania game. And that's what I hope we get, especially after having the fantastic anime adaptation on Netflix. I don't necessarily want a remake of Castlevania 3, but it does kind of stoke the fandom fire for more of those characters in that world. So I'm super pumped, and I hope this turns out to be true.
So what would you rather have with a Castlevania new game, remake, whatever? Would you like the traditional platformer that part 1, part 3, Castlevania 4, et cetera, all the platformers ones? Or would you like to have something like along the lines of Lament of Innocence, where it's like a third person behind the shoulder running around like that?
Well, I heard this idea from somebody else, and I'm sorry I don't remember who, but somebody said, what if Castlevania had a Breath of the Wild type game?
Ooh.
A big giant open world where you ran around and explored and fought vampires and monsters, and I would be 100,000,000% behind that. But if we get a 2D platformer, I am perfectly happy with that too. I will not complain one bit.
Yeah, I would agree. My preferences would probably be a 2D platformer, but that idea of a Breath of the Wild style Castlevania game sounds fantastic. I hope it's a lot better than what we saw on the N64 in regards to Castlevania games.
See, the only place it can go is up.
Pretty much, yeah, right. When you've got a bottom basement game like that, you can say, well, at least it's better than the
right.
64.
They had open world ambitions, and now the technology exists for them to bring them to fruition. But Metal Gear Solid 3 remake. Thoughts, Donnie, since you're such a big Metal Gear fan?
I think Metal Gear Solid 3 was very advanced for its time. I mean, it's still on the PlayStation 2, but it was more polished than what Metal Gear Solid 2 was. And I believe that one got a remake recently, if I'm not mistaken. I have to go back and check, because I know Metal Gear Solid 1 had a remake on the GameCube.
See, and I bet people wouldn't even consider that really a remake, because it's like
right.
The first Resident Evil game had a remake on GameCube, but then people are still screaming for a remake.
Absolutely. And I would be in the same boat. Like, I don't constitute that as a remake. If they wanted to take Metal Gear Solid 1 now and kind of remake it with some of the graphics that we have, like with the Resident Evil 2 remake, I would love to see the Metal Gear Solid universe look like that from the beginning. So if you want to do that and have me pay $20 for each one of those, part 1, part 2, and part 3, I would gladly do so. Now, by the time part 4 came around on the PlayStation 3, obviously, it looked a hell of a lot better. And Metal Gear Solid 5 just looks amazing. So do I really think that Metal Gear Solid 3 really needs a remake? No, but would I buy it if they did? Yes.
My outrage knows no bounds. Ooh, it's releasing when?
And one of the things with Konami is that they just haven't really pumped out a whole lot of games over the last 5+ years. And I would love to see more of their IPs get an opportunity to see the daylight again. More, we'll say, interesting new ideas coming out too. So them willing to partner with more people, probably a better move than doing nothing. So
True. I mean, since 2014, the only entries that Castlevania has had are like slot machines and pachinko machines and mobile games. So I guess you could say that anything would be better than that, but I'm afraid to say that.
We didn't mean that. We didn't mean that.
No, I am not tempting any sort of fate. I'm not trying to anger the Castlevania gods.
Is that what's going to happen whenever I'm like 80 years old and I'm sitting at the casino in my wheelchair with my oxygen, smoking a cigarette and playing a slot machine that has a Metal Gear Solid on it or Super Mario Brothers on it?
Probably. They'd be like, okay, Mr. G, it's time to go back. Pretty cool seeing these old machines, isn't it?
I live this, damn it.
Okay, let's get you to bed.
The mushroom is like Viagra. What?
Mushroom.
I don't need the Viagra. It's just as good as it once was.
Punching it. Work, damn it.
Quick, somebody give me some tape and a tongue depressor. All right, next up from Engadget, the Olympic Esports Series will feature Just Dance, Gran Turismo, and chess? The International Olympic Committee has laid out more details for the upcoming Olympic Esports Series, which will take place in Singapore in June. The lineup features facsimiles of real-world competitive events rather than what many people may think of as traditional esports, such as real-time strategy titles, fighting games, and first-person shooters. The initial batch of 9 games connects to disciplines overseen by international sports federations. They include Just Dance and online chess from chess.com. Some titles that have appeared at previous IOC-sanctioned events are returning, including Gran Turismo and Swift, which require participants to physically pedal at a stationary bike. Archery, baseball, sailing, taekwondo, and tennis games round out the list. Qualifiers for various titles, which include mobile games like Tennis Clash, start today. The esports series follows on from the Olympic Virtual Series, which took place in 2021 in the lead up to the Olympic Games in Tokyo. The esports events featured baseball, cycling on Zwift, rowing, sailing, and motorsport. The IOC says that the series drew in more than 250,000 participants from 100 countries. Although the organization is just warming up to the idea of bringing esports into the Olympic Games proper, the series is part of the IOC's efforts to engage with younger people and perhaps provide a gateway for them into real sports. No, I added the word real. I'm sorry. You know what? I'm going to leave it in. Strategic plan approved by the IOC in 2021 includes a recommendation to encourage the development of virtual sports and further engage with video game communities. Part of this involves an effort to strengthen the roles and responsibilities of international federations in establishing virtual and simulated forms of sports as a discipline within their regulations and strategies.
I have questions about this.
Yeah, this has got to be a swing and a miss, because who is this really for? This appeals neither to actual sports fans nor to esports fans. These are just weird games somewhere in the middle. Like, I qualified for the Olympics on Tennis Clash.
If these were virtual reality games, I would kind of be all for that, you know, especially with like something like Taekwondo. You go up against somebody. So let's just say, well, no, I guess I wouldn't be, because you got somebody who thinks they're a Taekwondo expert and they're not, and they put on a headset and they think they're some badass, like, I'm a Taekwondo gold medal expert at the Olympics. And you got the real Taekwondo people looking at you and scoffing like, what the hell?
Really? Why don't you come to the alley with us? Let's find just some friendly sparring.
The doorbell rings and it's Steven Seagal in front of your house. Like, I heard you're into Taekwondo.
I like that the last Olympic Virtual Series, it says they had 250,000 participants from 100 countries. If you could say, I have a gold medal in something, an actual, like an Olympic gold medal in something, like I have the Olympic gold medal for the Baja Men in Just Dance. Who let the dogs out? That's my gold medal. I mean, I guess, why wouldn't you do that?
When they print the like description on the back, be like, you don't have to put all that stuff,
Yeah, you could just leave it blank.
I just, if the other part of this too is that they've limited the traditional esports stuff, right? It's not Street Fighter, it's not Dota, it's not League of Legends, it's not any of those things. It's archery and pedaling on a stationary bike. Like that's not what your average gamer goes for. So what it sounds like to me is that they're trying to say, well, we want this to be like kind of like what you would get at the Olympics, but we don't necessarily want to pick the games that actual esports people would be interested in getting involved with it. I think that they could do that. I think they could bring like a legitimate, I could be a gold medal winner for Street Fighter V, right? I think that would be freaking awesome. And the amount of people that they would get eyes on that and they would say, okay, after this is gymnastics, so stick around for that. You're definitely going to have people who are going to still continue to watch after the esports is over with. So, and I think you pointed it out, Blue. This is not satisfying anybody's tickle. Nobody's getting the tingle from this.
But it's funny. It says this is part of the IOC's efforts to engage with younger people and perhaps provide a gateway for them into sports. Why?
Great question.
The same physical prowess and coordination, I don't think is going to transfer from esports into regular sports. Now, I could be totally off base here because I don't know what this archery, baseball, sailing, taekwondo looks like in a video game.
It's on Wii Sports Resort.
Yeah, same basic motions. It's all good. But are the levels of participation, the numbers, are they dropping for sports?
I don't know.
Like this is a bunch of graying suits on a committee. It's their idea to be like, well, children these days like video games, so let's throw some video games in. I mean, it's such a weird way to try to engage with young people and get them into sports.
It definitely sounds like a boardroom thing where they're going, all right, let's check the demographics from our marketing company. Okay, what are kids into? Esports. What's that? It's video games.
Right.
Yeah.
And even if you felt that the young people of the world didn't care about the Olympics and didn't care about playing actual sports, is the IOC really in a place where they can try to remedy that? Shouldn't that be left up to the individual countries and the individual communities to attack the problem as it is in their area, as opposed to applying this weird blanket solution to the entire world at once?
Excellent question. And I think you're right. It just seems so incredibly out of touch. I don't know. It's hard to describe.
Yeah. Well, if you're an esports athlete going for a gold medal this June, good luck to you.
I'm going to join. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it.
You going to do it?
Oh, I'm doing it.
What's going to be your specialty?
Definitely not the bike one.
But you got the calves for it.
I don't have the endurance for it, which is probably necessary.
You would have your vape right next to you, just like every. Next up from GameSpot, Final Fantasy XVI producers' pride as a gamer influenced new take on difficulty settings. Final Fantasy XVI is going in a more action-oriented approach than any previous game in the series. To help players who aren't as accustomed to that style of game, it's introducing a new variable difficulty system that is dictated not by selecting options in a menu, but by equipping specific pieces of equipment. Producer Naoki Yoshida said that the spark of the idea came from his own sense of pride as a gamer. When playing a game, you always get that part at the beginning where it says, select your difficulty, easy, medium, hard. Yoshida told GameSpot via translator, I have my pride as a gamer, so I'm never going to choose easy. I'm always going to choose medium or hard. But then when you die that first time, it says, do you want to change the difficulty to easy? I hate that. I have my pride as a gamer, and I hate that. Yoshida explained that he wanted to make a system that didn't put players in a position in which they feel like they were being insulted. So he turned to game director Hiroshi Takai and combat director Ryota Suzuki for a solution. The result was a set of 5 special accessories called timely assist rings that each target a specific type of challenge players might struggle with. One ring automatically uses your potions, for example, while another lets you hit complex combos with just one button. This allows players to change up the accessories at will to make up for any deficits. At the beginning, we're going to help you out, but once you've gotten used to the controls and you have confidence in your abilities, then you start taking away those hand-holding ones and start focusing more on your abilities, Takai said.
Video game training wheels. Hooray!
Exactly. But, I mean, in all retrospect, isn't that what the easy mode is? So essentially, he's taking away the easy mode and just incorporating it into the game.
Yeah, I mean, I actually kind of really like this idea because, for one, let's say you start the game and you started in easy mode. There's no simple way to get out of easy mode once you feel like you've gotten your footing in the game. You would basically have to start over. This lets you ease off the easy mode as you feel comfortable doing so. But I'm pretty sure that this is a direct reaction to the early criticisms of the Final Fantasy VII remake. Because remember when that demo came out, there were a lot of people who said that they died a zillion times, that there was too many things to keep track of. Like, how can you possibly keep track of when you're supposed to heal and when's your meter full so you can attack and where you're supposed to stand and when you're supposed to stagger the enemy? And there were a lot of people who just felt that there was way too much going on screen. So I'm betting that this is designed to mitigate those types of complaints.
And there's so much happening.
I think it's a great idea. I think it's a great way to give gamers the options that they want as far as gameplay is concerned. My only thing is just, I don't think I've ever been insulted when a game asked me what I wanted to play on.
Oh man, I have.
Oh, have you?
I mean, not at the beginning, but it's like, if you play through the campaign of Super Mario Maker 2, I think it's if you die 3 times on the same level, then a little dialogue box pops up with Luigi and says, "Hey, bro, do you want some help?" I'm like, "Get the out of here, Luigi. I know what I'm doing. I don't need your help." Maybe that's just me.
That touched a nerve.
Yeah, really. Luigi always went like, "Oh my god, that was so funny."
She yelled at Luigi. I don't think that every single game needs this kind of helping hand.
I'd agree with that.
I think when there's a lot of stuff going on, a lot of menu interaction, looking at maps and stuff like that, I can kind of see that little helping hand easing you in, getting you situated, and then taking its hands off the wheel and letting you drive. I like that. Games like Super Mario Odyssey, no, I don't think you need it in something like that. Games that have been proven or shown that they are a little bit more difficult just because of how in-depth they are or all the different options and features that they have, sure, that's a great idea.
But you get to choose the rings, right? You get to choose those that you want assistance with, correct?
I guess.
I think so, yes.
Okay, so technically you could just run through and say, "Don't give me the rings, I don't need this crap."
Yeah, sell them at the first merchant that you find and be done with it.
Yeah, because that's the other part is if there's no option for me to just go in and suffer and torture myself because that's what I'm into, that would be a problem.
I mean, that's what a lot of people want. Because what I think is so great about this is that just even mentioning easy mode is such a hot button topic these days,
Right.
where everybody has big opinions about it. There's the people who think that they take pride in playing everything on easy because life's so difficult as it is. So if I want my games to be easy, then that's my choice. Mm-hmm. And then there's the other people who are more like Yoshida and say, well, I have my pride as a gamer. I would never play anything on easy mode. But I think a lot of the problem comes with each group assuming that the other is trash because they don't think the same way. So this is just avoiding the debate altogether and saying, here's the rings, use them or don't, whatever.
And I like the idea, and I hope that it's something that's easy to recognize right away and that you're not going through the game in an easy mode without realizing it. For other games, obviously this wouldn't work. I think, as Donnie said, having Street Fighter where you just hit one button and it does the ultimate combos for everything.
I mean, they have those on Mortal Kombat.
Do they? I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, auto combo.
That's lame. Oh my God. Come on. That's like the best part of the game is that you learn the combo.
Right.
So it's this feeling of accomplishment.
So wait a second. Do you get to use the auto combo in Street Fighter in the Olympics?
That's a great question.
I'm going to guess no.
Everybody's a gold medalist then.
Right. I mean, even when you do the Mario Kart 8 Deluxe tournaments that Nintendo hosts, nobody gets to use safety steering.
I don't know if I'm using safety steering, but now I might. Because I clearly don't know what I'm doing. So, yeah.
Well, and it's on by default. You have to turn it off also, which is another thing I hate.
Oh, okay. So I have been using safety steering and I
probably you
still
have.
suck. Great. Just can hear my ego going as it deflates.
All right, next up, let's take a look at our top 3 new releases for the week.
All right, first up is Scars Above, out on PS5, Xbox Series X and S, PS4, Xbox One, and PC. Scars Above is a challenging sci-fi third-person action-adventure shooter combining the rewarding feel of overcoming difficulty with a compelling and intricate story set in a mysterious alien world to explore. Dr. Kate Ward is an astronaut and a scientist, not a soldier, but she's resourceful and determined to do anything to survive. Using a combination of ranged weapons, devices, consumables, and melee attacks, you need to manage stamina as you run, dodge, exploit weak points, and discover effective tactics to defeat your foes. Next up is Leap, out on the PS5, Xbox Series X and S, PS4, Xbox One, and PC. Leap is a fast-paced, multiplayer first-person shooter featuring epic, large-scale battles with players armed to the teeth. Fight for either the United Earth Defense Coalition or the rebel Exo-Terrans. Whoever pays the most wins your trigger finger and excessive arsenal. Work together with your teammates, use powerful weapons and unique class abilities, and traverse the terrain quickly with grappling hooks, jetpacks, and outrageous vehicles to seize victory. And finally, Wo Long Fallen Dynasty, out on PS5, Xbox Series X and S, PS4, Xbox One, and PC. A new Dark Fantasy Three Kingdoms action RPG from Team Ninja, the developers of Nioh. Wo Long Fallen Dynasty is a dramatic, action-packed story of a nameless militia soldier fighting for survival in a dark fantasy version of the later Han Dynasty, where demons plague the Three Kingdoms. Players fight off deadly creatures and enemy soldiers using swordplay based on the Chinese martial arts, attempting to overcome the odds by awakening the true power from within. So out of these 3 games, what are you looking for, Ryan?
It's actually all 3 of these seem pretty cool, to be honest with you. So it's a tough choice this week. As far as Leap is concerned, that sounds like something I could probably get into. Love first-person shooters. It reminds me a lot of Halo, so all on board for that. Scars Above sounds pretty interesting. This idea that you're not a soldier, but you're a scientist and an astronaut, and that you got to figure out how to survive. The only thing I don't like about it is that you need to manage stamina. I hate managing stamina in games.
I knew somebody was going to point that out.
Right. I just want to run forever. Okay.
I don't want to get winded.
This is the future. I got stim packs or something, right?
Right.
And Wo Long Fallen Dynasty looks super cool as well. Coming from the developers of Nioh, it's got to look gorgeous and it's got to play well. So this is a tough choice, honestly. At the end of the day, if I gun to my head, I had to choose, probably Scars Above is more my speed, minus the managing stamina.
Okay. What about you, Donnie?
Honestly, it all looks the same. It does.
It does a bit. You're right.
Looks the same. Every single week we get, a game that looks similar to Scars Above. We get a game that looks similar to Leap. We get a game that looks similar to Wo Long. None of these games excite me. I'm looking at some of the screenshots, and the only one that kind of does it is Wo Long. I love those type of fantasy games set in those cultures. Now, Scars Above, sci-fi, looks a little scary. With some of the aliens and stuff that she's encountering.
Too scary?
No, it doesn't look too scary. No, it's not Visage scary. But nothing is just launching out at me and saying, oh my God, I've got to play any of these. So for me this week, it's going to be a wash that I'm not interested in any of these.
Tough take.
What about you, Blue?
Well, I'll go ahead and dismiss Leap off the bat because I don't like shooters.
Mm-hmm.
Scars Above. Yeah, I would play that. Sounds interesting, looks interesting, but really I'm super excited for Wolong Fallen Dynasty. I've been keeping my eye on this game for a long time. It looks like a Soulsy game and Sekiro had a baby, and I watched some of the trailers, some of the gameplay, some of the monsters that they fight. Like there's this one giant boar with crazy demon eyes, and it's covered with like spikes and blood. I was just like, whoa, it's gnarly. So I think that looks super fun, and I'm looking forward to that one.
So wait a second. You said you don't like shooters, but you would consider playing Scars Above. That's a shooter.
Okay, I don't like first-person shooters, and its Leap is co-op, which I also don't like. So there you go.
I was trying to catch you up there. I didn't succeed.
You're going to have to try harder than that.
Your Honor, I can have the court reporter read it back to you. I don't have to have it read it back to me. Then why the two orders, Colonel? All right, let's take a look at our main topic for this week.
From Neiman Lab, is there a future for video game journalism? By every conceivable metric, the video game business is booming. Industry-wide revenue forecasts are scheduled to eclipse $500 billion by 2030, after generating $184 billion in the relative down year of 2022. 66% of Americans categorize as gamers if you include the casuals who enjoy the occasional round of Candy Crush on their iPhones. All this is to say that a dedicated video game desk, or at least a dogged video game reporter, is essentially a requirement for any newsroom dedicated to fluent coverage of pop culture. And yet, even as the hobby imprisoning nicheness crumbles, a ton of journalists on the games beat have suddenly found themselves out of jobs. The field is in its midst of a brutal, paradoxical contradiction. The world's power brokers are investing desperately in the games industry, but games media is another story entirely. Last month, Launcher, the Washington Post gaming vertical that broke ground in 2019, announced that they would be shuttering operations and terminating 5 of its staffers. News came on the heels of a number of smaller, more enthusiast-oriented publications hemorrhaging staff members at the behest of management. GameSpot and IGN, 2 bastions of games coverage, were shrunk by their owners' groups, Fandom and Ziff Davis, respectively. Fanbyte, which perfected a breezy, chatty, almost Gawker-like approach to the industry news, has been rendered a ghost ship by cuts last summer by parent company Chinese entertainment conglomerate Tencent. Even G4, the ancestral early aughts cable broadcasting company dedicated exclusively to video games, which relaunched in 2021 with a slew of familiar faces, lasted barely a year before it was shut down by Comcast in October.
I don't believe games journalism in the form we've known it is going to exist in a few years, says Merritt Kay, content manager of Fanbyte, and one of the few employees of the site who wasn't affected by the layoffs. There will be a few people covering big stories, either brought on by large media outlets or crowdfunding through Patreon, but there doesn't seem to be any appetite for traditional coverage of games either on the supply or demand side. The fear is that these kinds of pivots are emblematic of an ongoing discrepancy in the way games media organizations maintain their bottom line. Fanbyte has ditched its blogs and reports to function exclusively as a repository for guides, walkthroughs, and explainers for a slew of popular video games. That content draws a ton of easily monetizable SEO traffic. The same fate awaited GameSpot and Giant Bomb, 2 veteran video game media companies that were previously owned by CBS and were both sold to Fandom in 2022. The mercenary implication of this strategy is that both Fandom and Tencent hold a remarkably dismal perspective on the overarching value of games journalism. Rather than bankroll anything additive for the hobby, they have instead decided to build a nameless, faceless empire out of the muck of SEO optimization. It is perhaps easier to make these cynical decisions in the realm of video games, which still carries a kiddie, low art stench among the graying cadre of media executives.
That said, games journalists are at one unique disadvantage compared to the rest of the cultural dialogue because an expansive alternative media ecosystem exists on YouTube and Twitch, where hugely influential content creators like PewDiePie and Markiplier provide their own commentary about the games industry in direct competition with reporters. No, PewDiePie isn't launching the investigations you might find at a more formal media enterprise, but he does possess millions of subscribers who rely on him to illuminate and extrapolate upon the daily slate of headlines in the hobby. For some young gamers, a confederation of their favorite talking heads, all operating their own bespoke social brands, achieves the same purpose as the IGN homepage. It makes you wonder if the sudden spike of unemployed games journalists might be felt more acutely by the public if there weren't a bedrock of YouTubers sharing the same foundational bandwidth. After all, a YouTube channel is never at the mercy of mercurial ownership. Gene Park, a former launcher reporter who is now migrating over to the Washington Post style desk, acknowledges that some gamers believe that platforms like YouTube and Twitch have marginalized the role of games reporters. But he also notes that there's a symbiotic relationship between those who report the news and those who parrot the findings on camera. Many of those creators rely on the journalism produced by places like Bloomberg, Kotaku, or IGN, all of which have the kind of support and protection you'd need to accomplish such coverage, said Park. The industry is a gargantuan beat to cover, and the broader audience, that holy grail for anyone in the media today, will only grow more skeptical of companies who seem out of touch.
Wow.
Yeah, this hits kind of close to home, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. But when all of these other outlets are failing, you know where you can get your video game journalism from?
But we still use their articles.
I mean, they're talking about YouTubers who parrot headlines on their channels and get views from it. That's kind of us. We just don't have a YouTube channel, but that's what we do. We cover other headlines to make our show.
The news will still be there. It'll just be a different outlet. You know, it won't be like we won't get all the myriad of different outlets that have their different takes on it. It's going to get smaller and smaller and smaller. And now you're only going to have like one or two, maybe 5 outlets that put these things out. And that's a very small pool of opinions.
One of the things I think that I don't necessarily heard in the news article here that may be out there as well when it comes to gaming journalism is that over the years there's been a lot of criticism on just the nature of how certain journalists, you know, and news outlets are kind of out of touch with your average gamer, where maybe PewDiePie is a little bit more in the know when it comes to that kind of thing. And that's why people trust him so much to get their news, and maybe even trust us because we are in fact gamers, right?
Right.
And so I would hate to say that is driving some of these changes. Obviously, the biggest part of this is that there are news companies out there that just don't see a viable, you know, money-making operation out of video game news. But I think a lot of people have kind of shied away from video game journalism over the last couple of years, because it hasn't always been, we'll say, the best. So that's part of the catalyst to the downward trend that we're seeing on this.
Well, as somebody who has done games writing since 2017, I can say that it's complete shit.
There you have it.
Yeah, there you have it.
Hot take.
Somebody in an office somewhere who is just looking at trending searches online, and whatever is trending, that's what you write about. It's not about the content, it's about the SEO. Because that's how those sites, like it or not, that's how they continue to operate. And the more clicks you can get on it, the better. So there is this dichotomy where people love to criticize games journalists, but most of the time, those journalists aren't writing about anything that they actually want to be writing about. Like I remember one time I was assigned an article that said 25 reasons why Final Fantasy VII is the worst Final Fantasy.
Yikes.
Oh.
Right? See, exactly. That article was designed specifically to get people to disagree, click on it, share, go on rants and get tons and tons of clicks by people who are outraged. And it worked. And I didn't think it's the worst Final Fantasy. I didn't believe anything I was writing, but I was paid, granted, not very much, but that's what I was paid to write. And so as long as games outlets are paid by clicks, then yeah, it makes complete sense why these outlets are just dropping like flies, because you put out shit and people stop reading.
Right.
And so in a way, I'm not sad to see it go away. I don't necessarily want everybody to be rushing to PewDiePie for their
Rush to Gamers Week instead.
Right. There you go.
But I mean, I will say that's one thing that I really appreciate about our show is that we have different opinions. I wouldn't dare try to do this by myself and try to put myself out there as an authority, because I don't know everything. I don't have experience with everything, and I like hearing other opinions.
I think that's the best part, that what you just said, is that all three of us, even though we do agree a majority of the time, there are times when we don't. And you might have 5 of those different game outlets that are left that all share the same viewpoint. And when everybody thinks the same, the world is boring.
And I don't think we'll really get to that point anyway, because at least now we live in a world where we don't really need these games journalism outlets. All the individual game companies can communicate with their audiences directly. So if nothing else, you could just go get your news directly from the source. It takes longer. You're going to miss more, but you could do that. And so if all of these outlets close up shop, then that's what we'll still be doing. But I guess just in some ways, the gaming world is tired of the nonsense being put out by these middlemen outlets, just so they can get a few more cents off of a click.
Right.
My only concern is, typically when you think about the media, the old phrase that the media is the fourth estate, right? They're the checks and balances when it comes to, typically we're talking about government and all those kinds of things. But games journalism has been that fourth estate for a lot of different stories that have come out in regards to just corruption and things that have been going not exactly the way we would hope. If you're talking about just what's been happening, years past in Activision Blizzard, for example, and all of the crazy things that are happening behind the scenes. If you don't have a gaming journalism outlet that has the ability to investigate that kind of stuff, that becomes a situation where companies can get away with a lot more and treat their people and do things that are not companies that we would want to invest in our dollars or vote our dollars with, and you're supporting something that you don't necessarily want to support because there's nobody out there telling you what the truth is. That's my only concern.
Yeah, and that's valid, but I also don't think it will quite be like that, because you still have the employees of these companies that can go online and tell you what's happening. Filings will be made if next time Activision Blizzard gets sued, which will probably be next week because they're sued all the time. This information is still out there. It's just whether there's anybody who will take the time to share it.
And I think what the problem is that with games media, because they're chasing the dollars, they found themselves in the same vein as traditional media where, with traditional media now, it's about sensationalism, right? It's about keeping you on their channel so that you can watch their ads and they get more money. It's really difficult to come up with constant fear mongering when it comes to video games. A lot easier to do that with politics than it is to do it with video games. So you're stuck with doing articles that are about trying to trigger people. So media in general has really gone down that path, which is sad to say, but the idea is that for a functioning society, it's important to have people who are going to step up and tell the real stories.
Right. If only there was money in telling the real stories.
Yeah.
And there's just not. I mean, the term journalism has been cheapened so much in the last however many years.
Right.
It is about selling ad space, not about telling the truth. And that's unfortunate, but it is what it is.
It's also sad that what you just said, that there is no money in telling the truth.
Mm-hmm.
It is putting out absolute bullshit on any news media outlet, not just regulated to video games, and trying to rally this belief that what you're selling them is true when it's not. It's complete fabrication. And yet then that just breeds animosity between people who think that this is the right thing or think that this is the truth. But then the truth becomes relative.
Mm-hmm. I mean, there used to be the romanticized idealism of a journalist.
Sure.
it was its own worthy pursuit, and people cared enough about the truth that they would subscribe to the paper, that it was a steady job, and that you had the security behind you to go out and find the truth about these stories.
Right.
And now journalism amounts to clickbait that people can consume over their lunch break on Facebook. And that is 100% what games journalism has become. And having skipped around to a lot of different sites over the last 6 years and always keeping my eye open for a better job, for like the one that will actually be the good games writing job, and just seeing the way the listings have changed to, we're going to write about games, to, we're going to write about esports, to now you're just going to write guides.
Guides? Really?
Yep. If you can write guides, you can have a games writing job.
That means that you have to spend hours upon hours.
Right. You'll get $15 for that guide, and you have to spend hours upon hours upon hours playing this game to get it right.
Or you could go on GameFAQs and plagiarize it and just change things around like we did in college.
Right.
And, the one other piece to that is that by being a part of the press, an official journalist, you do have certain protections from government, from other people when it comes to reporting news. So there is that you're not going to get by being PewDiePie. But it's just freedom of the press that exists in a lot of countries. There's some protection for journalists who are going against, highly powerful people, including highly powerful games companies. But nonetheless, if it's not selling ad space and it's not bringing people in to look at it, you know what? It just doesn't work in this model.
The only solution is a fundamental upending of the system.
Anarchy, let's do it!
Woo!
Burn it down.
Burn it down.
All right, before we move on, let's take a quick break to talk about our sponsor. This segment is proudly sponsored by the Elitist Podcast. It's a show where 3 friends and occasional guests play games about video games, including trivia, game show games, and more. Here's this week's trivia question. Notes, bolts, coins, doodads, whatsits, stars, moons, so many collectibles out there in the gamer space. It can be a great way to spend some time in the games you love. Other times it can just feel like a chore to catch them all. Here's a question for you. Which N64 game had the most collectibles? Tune into the Elitist Podcast this Wednesday to hear the answer. You can find the Elitist on your favorite podcast platform, and we'll also have their links in the show notes. Now, I'd have to assume that what they just said, the catch 'em all, has something to do with a Pokemon game on the N64.
That is a fine guess. A wrong one, but a fine guess.
Really? A misleading clue embedded in the question. Tim, how dare you?
So based on that, I was going to say either Pokemon Stadium or Pokemon Snap, but knowing that that's probably wrong, I'm going to say like maybe
Redacted.
Blue, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I was going to say
Redacted.
or maybe
Redacted.
You were both right with...
Redacted.
Woo!
Look how smart you guys are.
The smartest.
I do have a college degree.
Yeah.
In pimpyology. Please don't put that in the podcast.
Yes, please.
Don't tell me what to do.
All right, fellow kids, break out those hammer pants, throw those special magazines underneath the bed, grab your Walkman, and make sure you get money from your mom when she drops you off the mall, because where we're going to need it. This is the Retro Rewind for March 1992. Let's take a look at the top Billboard songs for this month, March 1992. We have Vanessa Williams with Save the Best for Last. To Be With You, Mr. Big. Tears in Heaven, Eric Clapton.
Oh, jeez.
Remember the Time by Michael Jackson.
Remember the time.
Jamona. I'm Too Sexy by Right Said Fred.
Oh, God.
I'm too sexy for this cat. Too sexy for this cat. Oh, pussy. Oh, Pussycat. Masterpiece by Atlantic Star. I Love Your Smile by Shanice. Good for Me by Amy Grant. I Can't Dance by Genesis.
Wow. Okay.
And Breaking My Heart by Mint Condition. If you remember the I Can't Dance video, the music video by Genesis, they were all making fun of the ads or the commercials of the 90s. So like each little segment of the music video was a take on a particular ad. Like I think one was Bugle Boy jeans. Another one was Jesus, like a soft drink or something like that.
How very meta.
With the old guys from Genesis.
Yes. Hot at the theaters was Wayne's World. Wayne's World. Party time. Excellent. Swing. She's a babe. She's a robo babe. Did you ever get turned on when Bugs Bunny would dress up like a girl bunny?
I'm just going to cut the next 30 minutes of you two groaning to each other, and then we can move on.
Basic Instinct. My Cousin Vinny.
Oh.
The Lawnmower Man. Fried Green Tomatoes. Stop or My Mom Will Shoot.
Yes.
Medicine Man. White Men Can't Jump. Memoirs of an Invisible Man with Chevy Chase, which is a damn good movie. And The Hand That Rocks the Cradle.
Ooh.
Do you remember that one?
Yes.
With Rebecca De Mornay.
You got to pronounce it that way every time you say it.
Right. De Mornay. In the news, the Michelangelo computer virus begins to take effect. At the 6th Soul Train Music Awards, Natalie Cole, Color Me Bad both win. American businesswoman Leona Helmsley sentenced to 4 years for tax evasion, saying, "We don't pay taxes. Only the little people pay taxes."
Ooh.
Right? That still holds true to this day.
Jeez.
She's not wrong. What she did was saying it out loud.
That was like a Marie Antoinette let them eat cake thing.
Mm-hmm. Britain's Prince Andrew and Sarah, the Duchess of York, announced their separation. The Florida Marlins began selling tickets because they are a new team in the MLB.
God, I feel old now.
I know. I remember when that happened.
Mm-hmm.
And at the 64th Academy Awards, The Silence of the Lambs, Anthony Hopkins and Jodie Foster both win.
More Trailer Park Hannibal Lecter jokes.
Exactly. I can't really think of them right now. Hot at the arcades was Race Driving, X-Men the arcade game. When I saw that game, my mind was completely blown. I had so much fun. And I recently beat that game last year when I went to Up Down with my friend Aaron.
Nice.
We beat it, but then guess what? You play the damn game over again. It starts, it cycles over.
Yep.
And I'm like, what the hell? So we beat it twice, and I was like, you know what? I'm done.
Does it go a third time?
I don't know. We didn't go for a third time.
Oh, okay.
But 2 screens, 6 controllers, the behemoth that is that arcade.
Yes. I would love to own one personally.
Where would you put it?
You just park your car in your driveway, and then it goes where your car is.
Yeah, pretty much. Or I'd put it right in the living room.
Oh, there you go. Sorry, honey. We got to move some things around. The couch is like 2 inches from the screen.
It's perfect. Speaking of another game that I'd like to own, R360. If you guys don't remember this game, it was made by Sega, and it's a motion simulator arcade cabinet. And it was released in Japan in 1990, in the US in 1991, where you could sit there and it would rotate 360 degrees.
No.
And oh my God, I would love to own one of these cabinets.
Yeah, same.
I hope it came with a barf bag.
Oh, it's standard. It's standard.
A big one.
Yeah. All right, let's take a look at some of our articles from the readers. I feel games should not be rated. It's not like you're going out and really killing someone. If companies put labels on games, it will just make people want them even more, just like music with warning labels selling more than those without labels. Stickering games just makes the companies richer, says Brian Stout in Flint, Michigan.
Brian, a.k.a. Notre Dame Stout.
That's a bold take, Cotton.
Mr. Steve Reese from Dallas, Texas says, I don't think games should be rated because I'm old enough to choose games myself. I am 13 and I can go to any movie I want. So why should I not be able to play any game I want? Besides, ratings will not keep my friends and I who are not old enough to get a game from getting it. You're not wrong, but you're not also old enough to play any game you want, watch any movie you want, go anywhere you want. The issue of ratings is a growing concern for parents and gamers alike. We recently received information from a group called Parents Against Video Violence, whose goals are to, 1, monitor video game violence and its effects on our children, and 2, to seek congressional assistance in establishing a recognized organization responsible for instituting and maintaining a rating system for video games, and 3, to encourage parents to supervise the games that their children watch and get parents involved in the decision-making process when buying video games. Thank you. For more information on this organization, contact Lawrence Heath at 201-763-6209.
Are we going to call Lawrence?
Call
Are we
him.
going to call Lawrence? All right.
Be like, you're a square.
I know. What's the name of your organization again? That sounds like a no fun organization.
No, these are the people that actually want to monitor and help get parents involved.
Well,
yeah, but they also want to limit the amount of violence in games. is what I
right.
gather.
And use congressional hearings to do it.
Here we go.
Number is not in service.
Boo.
Oh, man.
Or dial 611 for customer assistance.
Man.
I really wanted to talk to Lawrence.
No kidding. Swing and
Imagine
a
if you
miss.
woke him up at home. You're like, what? Huh? What?
Who is this? Is this 1992? In video game news, Doug Lynn leaves LucasArts for Sega. JVC launches the Wonder Mega. The CDTV interactive multimedia player has a new, lower retail price. Commodore announced in mid-December that its system will now sell for $799.
Damn.
Bundled with the new Grolier Electronic Encyclopedia and Lemmings. The extra software represents a $450 value.
Because that's what's going to sell this thing is the encyclopedia.
Well, I mean, maybe parents who are on the fence about it would say, but hey, look, Dad, it has an encyclopedia. My grades will get better.
It's for education.
Right.
With your fingers like crossed behind your back.
Yeah, totally. You spend all your time in the encyclopedia.
Louis Galoob Toys, the folks that successfully defended the right to market the Game Genie video game enhancer for the NES, will soon pull another genie out of the bottle. This one for use with the Sega Genesis. The game enhancer should be ready by the second quarter of 1992. Details on the new version of the peripheral are scanty, but we do know that it will come with a 50-game codebook that will definitely include Sonic the Hedgehog. Games released this month were Addams Family for the Super Nintendo, G.I. Joe, the Atlantis Factor for the NES.
I had that game.
I know, I've got that game and the original G.I. Joe.
Nice.
Ghoul School for the NES, which I've never played. Star Wars The Empire Strikes Back for the NES. Wizards and Warriors 3 for the NES. Rival Turf for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System.
Such a shit game.
I know it is. Contra 3 The Alien Wars for the Super Nintendo.
Noise.
And Kid Chameleon for the Mega Drive.
Yeah, that was the sound I wanted to make, but you made it for me. Thank you.
You're welcome.
The collective groan. All right, kids, thanks for hanging out with me this evening. This concludes our Retro Rewind for this month. I gotta go. My parents are taking me to Planet Hollywood for dinner. Can you imagine a restaurant with all this movie memorabilia? This is going to last forever. All right, let's go ahead and wrap up this episode. Thank you for listening to episode 62 of Gamers Week Podcast, and a big thank you to the Retro Game Club Podcast, the Leadus Podcast, and Love Retro BTW for sponsoring this episode. Don't forget to check out their links in the show notes. If you want to connect with Gamers Week, follow us on Twitter at GamersWeekPC. Email us at gamersweekpodcast@gmail.com. Visit our merch store where we have new merch.
New. Ba, 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 ba. This is the beeps that never end.
Oh, God.
This is going to be a long-ass episode. Visit our merch store at gamers-week-podcast.creator-spring.com, or if you want to do it the easy way, follow the link in the show notes. Join us on Patreon at patreon.com/gamersweek. And finally, since you made it all the way to the end of this episode, please leave us a rating and a review to let us know how we did. We really do value your feedback. While you're there, consider subscribing on iTunes, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice. I ate her liver with some peanut butter M&Ms.
And a glass of bourbon.
Hey, I love peanut butter M&Ms.
And bourbon? They'd work. It's a combo.
Together, though?
I don't know.
Come on, this is Trailer Park Hannibal Lecter, all right?
With some Mentos and a Diet Coke.
Or how about the peanut butter M&Ms and the wild cherry Pepsi?
There you go.
There you go.
There you go.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Good night, people.
All right.
Swing. Welcome to Gamers Week Uncut.
Welcome to Gamers Week Uncut.
Welcome to Gamers Week Uncut, Patrons with Benefits. This is the unscripted, patron-only bonus cast with less editing and more dirty jokes. We don't know where the conversation will go, but we're sure it will be weird.
This fish just went right on my nipple, and I'm just like,
I Google Street Fighter 6. The first search result that comes up is people think they can see Ryu's in the Street Fighter 6 reveal.
Listen up here, kids. You're not going to want to get one of those VD STDs things, right? Make you fall off. When you go, grab a pro. You'll be doing it for America.
that was perfect.
If you want to hear weekly episodes of our patron-only bonus cast, join us at patreon.com/gamersweek.